Hello, everyone. I am back once again, this time with a triple review on 3 Lizard figures. The Marvel Select TASM Lizard, the Toy Biz Marvel Legends Tail Attack Lizard, and the Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure Lizard. So, here they are. I don't have the boxes for these two. I do have the box for the Tail Attack Lizard, so moving these out of the way. There is the box. It says Grand. It is by Toy Biz, though, as you can see on the bottom, on the corner there. But yes, there it is. Nothing on the top, nothing on the bottom, nothing on the sides. The box is dying, though. And then at the back, you get a bunch of product placement. You get Spider-Man with web line, you get the Super Jab Spider-Man, Snapshot Spider-Man, and a lot of stuff, the old UPC. This is an older figure. You can clearly tell, especially when the box does this. So anyways, let me prop these guys up, and I will tell you which one is worth adding into your collection. Time markers or anything like that, or any like cuts where you could skip to which part of the video you could watch. But honestly, I'll go through these one by one, starting off with the obvious, and that is the Marvel Select Lizard, my first Lizard. So let's talk about him. The paint and the sculpt on this figure is actually really good. Even though this was released in 2012, it still has a really unique sculpt. It's actually almost accurate to the film. It's just maybe the eyes could have been a different color. But yeah, look at that face. If you move it to the light more, yeah, it's a nice head sculpt. Although it's a weird expression for Lizard, it's not bad. Eyes are nicely well painted. The sculpt is very nicely well done. Cracks and whatnot. But yeah, weird design, not gonna lie. But thankfully they did sort of update it for No Way Home. So yeah, this is a good substitute for a No Way Home version, considering there's not really that many changes, other than I noticed his head is a little bit more like a little bit more like his classic version. Still a little humanoid, but isn't too much. But yeah, you could see it's nicely well done, nicely sculpted at the head. You can see the nose right there, the lips, but again, it's just the head sculpt. It's just the expression he's making is pretty bad. Moving on to the arms, mine I did buy used, so he does have missing finger right there. But as you could see, one hand actually had 4 fingers, one had 5. So I guess this is in the finale where they actually, towards the end of the movie where they actually fought with these. But honestly, I don't think it's terrible, other than I don't think the change in whatever fingers is there is not that bad. It's just I wish he didn't have this. But honestly, the sculpt and the paint is really nicely well done. There's a nice tan color to go along with it. Although there are some paint chipping due to age, unfortunately on the body, it does look nicely well done. And you see that the green on his arms, there's even a little bit of shading, and that's really nice. You could even, I think there's even like little pieces of vein showing, which is kind of creepy. But yeah, look at the claws, but also look how dented they are. Man, I might do a repaint on this figure, but this figure is really old, so I might not do it. Moving on to the legs, a little less on tan, which is okay. Not terrible in the slightest. It's nice. Again, it's nicely well done, nicely sculpted. It's nicely textured too. And moving to the feet, before I move on to the back, moving on to the feet, again, more paint chipping, unfortunately, because this figure is so old. And yeah, it actually looks really nice. I think there's a little bit of shading too on the toes. Moving on to the back, there's actually, if you notice, there's actually a stripe pattern. Now that I noticed it, there is stripes on the back of his arms and his leg, but most certainly his tail, which it's not bad. It's not compared to the Build-A-Figure, which I'll talk about later. But you can see where the tan color would go, and it goes up to the tail, which is a very small tail, unfortunately. but it is nicely textured and sculpted. I don't know if it, fits well, but at least it does look nicely sculpted to the point it won't look so distracting, unlike one other figure. All right, now let's move over to the articulation to this guy. So, articulation for this guy is okay. It's not bad, but once you move on to the legs, it's kind of just eh. But this is a really old Marvel Select, so it's not much. His head is on a ball joint, but can't really do much. He can look up this far. I wouldn't force it down this far. He could tilt. He has a rotation swivel. Hopefully that does not break. Arms can go 360. A little bit of a ratchet. Well, it's a hinge in and out joint. No bicep swivel, unfortunately. There is a swivel, forearm swivel with a single jointed elbow, which actually kind of reaches 90. And I forgot to, and of course, hinge jointed hands. Nicely well done with nice posing. You can get nice posing with this guy, and that's shown. No waist articulation. He does have this articulation around here, around the upper part of his torso. So it's nicely well done. You can look down this far, move back this far. Not to look down. The legs are a different story, and this is why it kind of falters. The upper body is fine, but it's like the lower body that has so many issues. His leg is on a swivel, and he can kick up this far, and you see what I mean? It's not on a ball joint it's not on a ball joint or anything. He can kick this far, but if you want to move his leg, if he wants to kick, he has to do this, and then he has to move his knee. It's weird, I know. It's an older figure, so that's why he can spread really nice, but he can't really like kick or do anything he can't kick back or kick forward. Knees are there, so this could count as a swivel for a thigh swivel. Hinge jointed swivel knees, and a hinge joint swivel on the ankle. And this works in a sense. And then moving to the tail, which is a hinge joint swivel and no bendy wire. So yeah, our posability is good, but around good when you get here. When you get here towards the lower torso, it's kind of bad. It's an older figure, so I can't really blame it too much. And I will admit, this figure is actually a lot better than maybe some Legends or other Selects maybe, or you could say that Select just improved. But if you want to get into a good pose, you just really have to finagle it, and this is what you have to do. It's difficult to do because of the limitations of articulation. And if you want to stand him, first of all, you need to angle his feet correctly, and then you actually have to do something else. Because not only does he have an issue with his ankles, he can't really stand very well unless you have the tail pointing down. So, unfortunately, that's the problem with him. But otherwise, articulation is actually not that bad. You can get some good poses. It's going to be just not as much kicking or running or anything like that. You could do some good slashing poses, though. So anyways, moving on to the Ultimate Lizard, because that's, I think, what he is. Other than being called Tail Attack Lizard. Moving on to the next figure, which is the Tail Attack Lizard, or as I like to call it, this is probably the Ultimate Lizard, considering, like, this design looks more like the Ultimate Comics. And I've never seen a lizard design like this. So anyways, I think this one, the paint and the sculpt is unique. It's different in a way. It's old. It may have some things wrong, but it's interesting. So we move on to the head. There's actual slits in the eyes rather than anything else. And that's pretty cool to see. There's a fin up here and the fin down here. And it's like, oh, that's actually pretty unique. But you could see it gets kind of broken by the sculpt. And then he has a little chin fin over there. The teeth are nicely painted with a nice inside of the mouth. Again, eyes are nicely painted with the slits. This outfit looks more like Frankenstein or a zombie or something like that. But yes, there's an extra fin there. Shading is a little inconsistent. There's like weird silver up here, and then there's like black paint over here. There's there's the fingernails, which are nicely done, and yes, he has 5 fingers. I don't think it really matters how many fingers the lizard really has. I don't think it really matters to me, but yeah. He looks more, yeah, the texture, though, does look really nice. A little inconsistent, but it does look really nice. Kind of makes me a little hungry, not gonna lie, because it looks like salmon. Moving on to the legs, yeah. They're nicely well done and nicely sculpted with a nice amount of tears and nice texture, too. Oh, yeah, I just found out this piece is also weirdly rubbery. Yeah, but look at the detail on the knees, and it looks also kind of delicious, not gonna lie, because it has like this really nice salmon. It looks like salmon. I could really eat it. But yeah, it's nicely well done. I love the paint. They went with it. And then yeah, he also has these nice toes, which look really nice. And moving forward to the tail, it is one solid piece again, and also, as you noticed, this is why it's called Tail Attack Lizard. Anyway, yeah, this is actually a separate piece out of the box, so you just simply tab it in, and there you go. It's easy to pop in and out, but who wants to really take it out? Oh, come on. But again, there's a nice bend here, so it does look really natural, and that's actually pretty cool, not gonna lie. But there is some plastic showing, and there is like this nice amount of shading, but again, this isn't, it's a little distracting, but not too much. But honestly, this just looks nice. This is just a nice looking figure as a whole. Now, let's move on to, actually, before we move on to that, he actually comes in an accessory. Can't you believe it? And that's an assembling table. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually like this accessory. I really, really do. I don't think it's a bad accessory. But I have one gripe with it. It's a little difficult to assemble. It's a little difficult to assemble because you have to balance it, and yeah, it's just not really, it's fun. It's not necessarily the greatest to put together. You may as well just glue the whole entire thing, but yeah, what this meant to do is if you do this, that was aggressive. But yeah, that was the whole point of that gimmick. Anyways, actual articulate. Well, actually, you know what? If you want me to gush over this thing, then fine, I'll go gush over this. So yeah, nice texture on the legs. They're nicely textured, but a little basic, not gonna lie. But when you go onto this, the main table piece itself, this is actually really cool. You got these little folders here and these test tubes, and these look really nice. It's nicely well done. For a second, I thought you could open this, but nope, it's just folders. That's actually really nice. And then you get a set of lab booklets, and I don't even know what this is. Maybe I need to watch more chemistry stuff. But anyways, it does look nice and nicely sculpted, and it is a nice piece, not just for the lizard, but also for any diorama. All right, let's actually go to the articulation now. This guy is actually probably the most posable lizard because, you know, old Toy Biz. There is one issue with the articulation that I'll mention soon enough. But overall, I think articulation is really good. Starting with the head. He has a ball joint, and it's good. However, very limited because of the sculpt. So that's why when he looks up, a little awkward. Looks down, a little awkward. I think it's mainly the torso that does all the work. But he does have a hinge joint at the jaw. Anyways, his arms can go 360 in and out. That is stupidly tight. Bicep swivel with a double jointed elbow. There is a weird cut in the wrist, so that's why the sculpt is just, it's ugly. It's ugly cut in the wrist. Yeah, and he has a hinge joint and finger articulation, but again, it's that cut on the wrist that you have to sacrifice, so it may not be for you. There is a nice ab articulation, and it's nicely well done. well, I wouldn't say it's nicely well done, but it does get its job done to sort of, you know, make sure the lizard can look down or anything. No waist swivel. And of course, as I mentioned, the gimmick for the tail. And then the main issue is the legs. Now, there's nothing wrong with the legs, but it's this thigh right here that I'm worried about. I did put hot water on this thing, but I felt like it was about to snap, so I didn't do it. But that's why the leg looks so weird. And he looks more like a frog, I'm not going to lie. But anyways, his leg can kick up this far, back this far. Actually, it can go 360 all the way it wanted. He has a hinge joint at the knee. He can kick, but I don't want to go through that effort. And then he has a thigh swivel. And as I mentioned, the thigh swivel is really frustrating. He has a hinge joint. He has a double jointed knee, another calf articulation, and then a hinge jointed wrist with hinge jointed feet with a pivot and toe articulation. That is a lot for a lizard. That is actually really good for a lizard, despite my main issue I have here and the tail, of course. Otherwise, this is a really good lizard, not gonna lie, in terms of articulation. And it's the most posable. So yeah, I think articulation, it's good. You're gonna get a lot of good poses with this guy. And as long as you know how to sort of take care of the legs and whatnot, please let me know. Otherwise, yeah, this figure is really good in terms of articulation. It's a really good figure, it's just really good articulation. I repeated that maybe 3 times maybe, because I don't know what to say. But it is, after all, a good articulated figure. And again, as I said so many times, the best articulated lizard. And if you want to know if he can stand properly, he actually can, without the tail supporting him. So anyways, let's move on to my favorite of the ones, the Build-A-Figure. I actually think the Build-A-Figure is really good. And this figure I've been wanting for the longest time. And yeah, I'm happy I got him at a depressing price. But yeah, I think overall the sculpt is really good. And so is the paint. However, there are some things that I will mention that could be a little different. First off is the head. That is not, as many have said, that is not lizard. That is a dinosaur. And yes, especially towards the side, it looks more like a dinosaur. But it's still nicely sculpted to be its own thing. And then look at the neck. I know I can't really show much, but the neck is just nicely painted and nicely sculpted with a nice texture to it. And the head is just awesome to see, even though, again, this looks more like a dinosaur rather than lizard. You can see the articulation right there. You could see it. You could see how nicely painted his eyes are, actually. So if you want to see that in the camera, I'm going to shine light here. That is some nice eye paint, not going to lie. And some teeth paint. I do like the tongue, but it does come off as a little excessive during articulation. And as you notice, there is an issue with most lizards where, as you can see, he still has the articulation joint here that's still green. Moving on to the lab coat and the entire body. This is the only classic lizard I have. So, yeah. The lab coat is nicely painted and nicely sculpted with all these weathers and cracks. You can even see the bottom here, which I think is intentional to be like this dirt. But you can see the pockets and the wrinkles and, of course, all the damages since he's transforming. And it's nicely well done. You can even see the tears throughout his sleeves, which shows that he's, transforming, I guess, for the first time. And you can see there's even damage on the sleeves here, so around the cuff part of the sleeve, and it does look nice. And you can have these nice little scales that are also just nicely textured and nicely sculpted. Moving on to the hands, they're nicely painted too, nicely sculpted too. However, the issue comes along the fact that his nails aren't painted, so that's a little bit of a bummer. Moving on to his chest, and besides not only just the lab coat, there is a huge tear right there on the sculpt, and it looks nicely well done. You could see a little bit more of his abs, not gonna lie. Now moving on to the legs. Again, he has those purple pants. They're tearing. You can see the bottom sleeves here. They're just torn in half. They're nicely sculpted. And look at the paint. It's nicely painted too. However, this is an older figure, so if you're expecting pinless joints, you're not going to get it. Now, there is a little bit of shading as well on the hand, which is nice. And overall, I think the sculpt on this lizard is really good until we go into the tail. Yeah, that's just, I'll point out the obvious in articulation, but if you own this figure, you know what happens. But it is nicely sculpted if you just lay it out normally. Just look at that. It's just, oh, it actually looks so good. And yeah, it is really nice, not gonna lie. And again, awesome texture it has. And maybe it's just me, but I just can't help but kind of enjoy this figure a little bit more. I know there's a retro figure, and I think in terms of articulation, that figure is better. And in terms of being a classic lizard, I think that figure is better than this. But that doesn't mean this figure really is that bad. Despite the head, I think this figure is really good. And I actually I can't really get mad too much about the head. I think it's a nice, interesting take on the lizard to make it a little bit more like a dinosaur. So yeah, I'm actually okay with the head being a little bit more dinosaur-like than anything. And it just flows well with the sculpt. Now let's move on to, I think, the main issue, the articulation. Articulation, this is going to be an interesting one. It's not the head this time, it's the whole neck. So that's why the whole neck moves, as you see. He can do this. It's on a ball joint. He can look up this far, look down this far, and that's with these added hinges on both the upper part and lower part of his head. So he can open it like so, which makes for some fun poses, actually. But again, this right here brings a lot of issues. Arms can go 360, in, out motion, and that could pop off easily. And if you want to get a better look at the cloak, there you go. All right, I'll just put it back on real quick. But yeah, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, look at the back. It's even the back is painted. And yes, this is a separate piece. All right, stop. I should have done this before, but I'll just go over I'll just put the jacket back on. There is a nice articulation here. He actually has an ab crunch, so that's why you can getting him into leaning poses or just make him looking up. He has a waist swivel. It's a little loose on mine, but it's not too bad. You can kick. Oh boy. Yeah, this is the main issue. These godforsaken knees. These knees are pain. You can't. And I've seen a lot of customs where they've actually full on disassembled the knee to make it more like he can kick up. And that's actually a really good idea, not gonna lie, when, he can't really kick up. So that's why the kick is pretty. He still has a nice leg articulation, but it's like, it doesn't really look nice when you have this. But as I've shown, up, kick up, back, spread, bicep. He has a thigh swivel. I think I forgot to mention he has a thigh swivel, or an arm swivel, or bicep swivel. Then he has not only just that, he has, again, that aforementioned terrible hinge-jointed knees and a hinge-jointed pivot toe articulation feet. That can hold him up, I think. Oh, never. Well, actually, I think the main issue is just the fact that he's a little top-heavy. But the main issue is just this tail. Oh, God, this tail. This tail, one, kind of hinders the sculpt, the articulation, and it's on a ball joint, then a hinge, then a hinge, and then a hinge. That looks awful. That looks so bad. Look at that. That looks awful. Maybe this part could be angled out, but like, gosh, that looks awful. Other than the tail and the knees, I think posability is not too bad. It's not on the level of quality as, let's say, the Ultimate Lizard, but it's good enough to get good poses out of him, and this actually shows. Again, look at that. He can just straight up run at you. He's running at you. It's posable. Well, I feel, although, spoiler alert, I'd rather let you get the retro if you can find it, but, yeah, let's move on to the final part of the video, and that is the size comparisons. Now, as for size comparisons, this guy almost stands at 7 inches. If it wasn't for these damn knees. This guy stands at rough over 6, almost 7 if you count the fin. And this guy actually stands at almost 8. It's like 8 inches. So, let's move on to, if you want a comparison, I have Electra right here. And if you want to know what I'm doing with him, I actually customized his head and I customized his hands. So, I did a lot of work on this guy. So, I'm going to fix him. But there he is with the lizards, and it works nice. I don't know where my Green Goblin went, but probably put it back in my room. But otherwise, final thoughts on these guys? Let's go. Oh, buy now, skip, or skip because these guys are old. These figures are really cool, not gonna lie. I love lizards, so I may have a bias with that. But honestly, these figures they're awesome. I actually, although with some issues, I think they're really good. Marvel Select it's actually a better lizard figure than the Marvel Legends one. I'll show one on screen, but yeah, that figure just straight up sucks. It has better articulation, but just the sculpt just does not work for me. Compared to this is just way better. And yeah, it's not a bad figure for actually today's standards. It's nicely sculpted and painted. It's just the articulation that really, really kind of knocks it down. The size is actually more appropriate for the film. It's just, again, articulation's a bit of an issue. And maybe more accessories, but I don't know. I think this guy actually had a base. I don't remember. I got it used. Now, as for the Ultimate Lizard, the Ultimate Lizard is actually probably the cheapest one. If you could find one for a decent price, go get it. It's a good figure, but I don't know. I'm just not so used to that design. I'm just not used to this lizard design. It's nicely done. It's nicely well done. It has a good sculpt. It has a lot of great paint, and is probably the best articulated lizard out of these three. But it's also just, oh man, it's just, I don't know about the tail gimmick, and I don't know if anyone's going to really enjoy this design. Now, as for the Build-A-Figure, I don't think the Build-A-Figure is that bad. I actually consider it as one of the more underrated Build-A-Figures. It's not, yeah, sure, the head looks more like a dinosaur, and the tail is a little bit of a mess, but I don't hate it. I really don't. I actually really enjoy it. I can get good poses with this guy. It won't feel like, although I wish that he, not only just the head and the tail articulation were just, the head was a little bit more improved, the tail a little bit more improved, and also I wish the knees as well were just, they were better design, because they just suck. They're just terrible. He practically has to crouch throughout most of the time, but still doesn't mean I hate this figure. Now, despite saying this, if you could find either of these for a good price, go get it. Personally, out of all these three, I'd either get the Ultimate, or if you want something articulated and just really posable, I suggest you get the Ultimate. If you want something that's more classic, I suggest you get, but a little bit bigger, I suggest you get this. I'd only get this if you're, looking for a movie lizard, but honestly, I'd rather wait until Hasbro is going to make one, which Hasbro, you better speed up. It's 2023, and you're making figures for a movie that's released in 2021. Why? Anyways, after that little rant, if there's any other affordable lizards on the market, there is actually a retro card Marvel Legends lizard that has more alternate accessories and is actually nicely articulated and sculpted too to be more like a classic lizard. My only gripe with that figure, I guess, is I don't like the I don't like the scale. The dude, like, Lizard to me is always a big sort of guy. He's a guy, he's always, when I think of Lizard, I think of Lizard like from him, you know? He's always big and Hulk and slender, you know? So, yeah, I suggest you get either the it's really up to your choice, you know? And I honestly suggest you get either, again, these two or the retro. I don't see any point in getting this. So if you want my ranking, here's it goes. This figure gets an 8. He gets a 7.5, and he gets an 8.5. Maybe just me, because this is the only classic Lizard in my collection. That's why I gave him the best rating. But otherwise, these three are pretty decent Lizards. And also, if you want to get the Marvel Select, you can. But honestly, I don't know about that one. So anyways, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. And I will see you all later with the next review. Bye-bye.